Okay, so this is the second part of the recording for 11.7. So far now, we have a student list working and we have the student detail. Obviously, we're not done with the student detail, but we're at a point in which we can start talking about the stuff. We have an add student component, which we're going to work on a little bit today. But the primary thing we're going to work on is error. So this works great when you get a student that actually matches. But what happens when we have this? We get errors. What we're going to do is we're going to learn how to deal with those errors. It's actually very simple, but it's the first process we're going to deal with. The first thing we want to do is what happens if the number doesn't exist. Great. You can see we get a 404. That indicates that that student doesn't exist. But what about if I put you suck? You get a 400, indicating that that is not an acceptable response. So let's go see what we got to do. So I have too many windows open, so I'm gonna close them all. Student detail is the component we're interested in, and it's this guy. So this dot student get blah 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 blah. You remember we have route. Route. I don't think we put router in there. We installed it, but we never actually did anything with it. We're gonna actually need to do that, but that's fine. This route.param subscribe, blah blah blah. So we have the data. And this is kind of what I was talking about before. You can get the data off of it, but you can also get an error off of it. And you go, wait, what? Right? And you go. So just like you get the data, you're going to subscribe to the error. It's the same concept, except you're going to get, this is when things go right, and this is when things go wrong. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually be able to use information about the error by saying if error dot status 404. I like to have these. It's not necessary, of course. I'm going to go console.error. No, not user, because I'm doing something different. Student exists. Else if error. Oh no. I'm going to do console.error, and I'm going to say unknown error, and then I'm going to print out the error, so you can see what the error looks like. Yay! Now, here's the bad news. If this is an error, if we get a situation where this is an error, we don't want just a console, right? We don't want to sit there in a failure, right? We don't want to sit there in a failure, right? Because it's just going to display this, and this is garbage. What do we want to do? We actually want you to navigate to a new page. So how do we do that? Actually, very simple, but it requires a router. So let's go ahead and add the router in there. And yet, my dog isn't sleeping in the room, and she's snoring. Hopefully you guys can't hear her. I apologize. So I'm going to have a router here, and then I'm just going to go inside here. I'm going to go this dot router. Router is different than route, and then I want to navigate by URL. Oops, sorry. And then come on, Ruth. And then I want it just to go to the student list. Okay. I'm going to show you an alternative way to do this. In either case, route user to the list, right? The list is sort of a default landing page, and so that works out great for us. And we just use route navigate by URL, works out pretty well. We can also use not going to do this but I am going to show you, right? This router navigate totally works. The difference is you have to put in a parameter. It takes an object that looks like a URL. If you had like a parameter like we did before, and that would work as well. In our case, we don't need it, so we don't do it. But if you want to send a parameter, this is usually a good way to do it. But if you're not sending a parameter, you're just going to a URL like this is, then that's great. One thing I want to point out here is this is important. It might seem like it's not that important, but once this happens, this component is done. There's nothing else that's going to happen on this page. This page is done. So we go back to our page. We still have the list open. Oh yeah, I forgot. We need to make sure it compiles. It compiled. We go here. Doop. Now let's go ahead and put a number that doesn't exist. Right? Student doesn't exist, and it sends us back to the list. You still get the error, right? The error still happens. You still see it, right? Because the browser is actually sending off that request and getting the response. So you still get the error, the 404. But you can see I have a console.log, an error, and it shows me what the actual error is. Let's put another one in there and go, you suck, right? Again, oops, excuse me. I didn't do that properly. Here we go. You suck, right? You get the 400 error, right? It's invalid request, right? Because it's not a string. But you see the unknown error, and then you see the error. And as you can see, it has an error. So it has a status thing. You can grab a timestamp. You can grab the error message, such as bad request. You can see it also has a path to indicate what path you try to use. You have protocol, prototype, which is pretty useless. If you wanted to read the headers, you can read the headers. Nothing very interesting. You also have a message. You can read the message, you can read the name, you can read whatever. But the status, error.status is what we're interested in 99% of the time. And that is the 400, right? Because that's all we really need. As we know, somehow a bad request was sent. And so as a result, we want to route back to navigate URL. Honestly, if it's a 404, you might want to say student doesn't exist for troubleshooting purposes. But for any other error, it really doesn't matter what error we get. If we can't load the page, if we get an error, we really need to navigate. So it works out pretty well. Don't check too many statuses. We really generally don't need to do them. This is just for console logging so that it can kind of give you an idea of what's going on if something's going wrong. It shouldn't happen automatically. Right? If it shows it in the list, it should have a page to go to. But every once in a while, you'll have a wrong browser thing or something weird will happen. You really do need to do some error checking virtually if an error can occur. And we're going to see that as we go along. In fact, unfortunately, we're going to see it in a lot of places. Now, why didn't we have it in the student list? Because as long as this is running, it'll get the data. If it doesn't get the data, then the student list being empty is still fine. This is still fine, right? So if it doesn't get the data, this is still fine. Right? So that's why this doesn't have any error checking code. But with a get a single student, you have the possibility of that student not existing. You have the possibility of it not even being a student, right? If it's not an ID. It's not in the correct format, you have all those possibilities. And so this is what can happen in that case. So if you're sending a category, you're sending whatever as a parameter, anytime you send a parameter, you can get a situation in which list. You can get a situation where it doesn't exist or the format is incorrect or what have you. You need to check for those error statuses. Later on, we're going to have another one that we'll be adding along. Essentially, if the user's not logged in, we'll have errors as it relates to tokens not being correct and so forth. So we'll need to check that as well eventually. Right now, this is a basic error message. I would point out that most of these error statuses are just checking for an error status and being done. There's not a lot of massive detail that we use. You'll see that we do some console error like this, but for the most part, if there's an error code we check and then move on with life. We don't do a lot of things with it because it's not necessary. I mean, it really isn't. You do need to error check, but don't go crazy with it because there's really very little reason to. Okay. Oddly enough. Am I missing anything? Nope. There's one thing I do want to talk about, but I don't have it here. But now is a good time to talk about pipes, the formatting pipes. I just don't have the URL for it, unfortunately. So we're going to Google it. Sometimes it's good to do that. In Angular, transforming data using pipes. Now, bad news about pipes. I want to just point this out ahead of time before we get crazy. There are some really simple pipes, and that's awesome. And that's what we're going to work with almost immediately. Okay, uppercase, lowercase, currency pipe, decimal pipe, and percent pipe, and date pipe, blah blah blah. They all work kind of the way you expect them to work. We're going to use a decimal pipe initially to format the decimal point GPA. That's what we're going to do. But you can use pipes to do a bunch of other things. Okay, you can create custom and so forth. I'm not going to get complicated unless we really, really need to. But go ahead, using a pipe. We just use the pipe character. That's why they're called pipes. The pipe character is shift. It's usually above the inner sign, but you'll see me. You have a date. This one has a date. You can see the date, and then you can format the date according to a date, right? So it's saying birthday is a date, format it to a date. But the interesting part is you can actually format the date by giving a parameter to the date. That's not that interesting. What I want to show you is you can make things uppercase by just putting uppercase. We're going to play with that one, but the one I really want to show you is where is the number format? I'm sorry, it's a decimal pipe and the currency pipe are the two probably more important to you. But you put a number format in there and it looks like this, right? You say number and then it looks like this and you go, wait, what? It is the minimum integer digits, right? Followed by a period, followed by the minimum fraction digits and the maximum fraction digits. So a GPA should look like what? Right, go back to student detail. It's done in here. A GPA should look like what? We use the pipe symbol. It should be a number. What's the minimum number of things to the left of the period, right? It is 1, right? And then what is the min number of things after the decimal point? Is 2. And what about what's after is also 2. Also, I think I had that wrong. Yeah, the second one is a dash. So the second one is a dash, right? And such a minor change, right? Oops. Oh yeah, it's on the student detail. It's such a minor change, right? But it actually works, and it works anywhere, and we get this by default. So if I just grab this, and then I go to student list component, and I just add it on, right? Now it's going to do that formatting everywhere. I screwed something up. Let's see, what did I do? Yeah, I added an extra. Oops, there we go. Copy and paste, get you every time. And there you go, and you have a proper GPA, which is great, right? So there are other pipes as well. Don't get too complicated with it, but we can go, right? We can make things uppercase or lowercase pretty easily. I don't even know where I did it. I think I did it here. That one was already, it's all already uppercase. So let's go grab the name and put it in the name, just so we can see a difference. I don't really care for it, but there you go. Simple transformations are actually simple, and they should be. There should not be a complicated thing. Now, I'm going to change this to currency, even though it doesn't make sense in the current context, just so we can know how currency works. Many of you were using cost and so forth. So now you use currency and you use a display, right? So what does it look like? Use a currency. Where's the example? There you go. And then you just say currency, and 90% of it will do what you want it to do, right? Can you format it differently if you want to? Yes, but most of the time we will not. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to move this briefly to here, and then I'm going to just say currency. Without any guidance, it's automatically going to go to your locale, and so that's automatically dollars and cents, right? And so it's going to format it according to currency rules. So it's pretty simple. If you need to get fancy with it, feel free to do so. There are currency rules. You can see, different types of currency and how you can change it by, what's called. You can have it in different languages, and so you name it, right? So there can be a large number of things that you can change it to. That's fine. And then you can see, how it works out and so forth, if that's something you want to do. I'm going to leave it off. I'm not going to actually do anything other than what you call it, but this is how we do simple formatting. Decimal percent pipe works the same way as you think it does. Minimum integer digit fraction, right? So you want it to be 26%. You just type percent, and it automatically takes 0.26 and makes it 26%, I believe, and so forth. So works out pretty well. I will point out, though, keep it simple. There's no reason to use a complex series of pipes when it's really, truly not necessary. I didn't save this, did I? There we go. All right. So now we included pipes. I'll make sure you have the link to the pipes. It's actually really simple. What you really want to avoid is doing these really complex pipes, right? Creating custom transformation. A lot of time what we end up doing is really doing some really crazy things when it's much, much easier, at least because it's Angular, to do the change or the transformation in here, right in the code, and then do it here rather than create some hardcore pipe. Could you do it? Yes. Do you want to do it? Probably not. The amount of effort that you will expend is probably not worth your time. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up a couple other things I wanted to do real quick. First of all, I wish to find my homework 3. I think it's a new folder. Homework 3. And I'm not really interested in homework 3 for any other purpose other than grabbing this. Oops. Yep. Okay. So bang. Just copying it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the app component CSS. So it's global for the application. And I'm going to change something in here as well. I'm going to go for this to be name. I think that's the name I was using for the buttons that are not. Yeah. There we go. All right, this might not load. So if you want that to load, you might have to restart that sucker because you already have the page loaded. So it might not reload it the way you might want it to reload. Um, and so you might have to reload it that way. Because not it recompiles the code, but you can see it's recompiling the code, not the things attached to the code like CSS. So it probably didn't see the change and still didn't see the change. Huh. Okay. Did I put it in the right place? Yeah, actually, let me go ahead and grab it. And I'm going to check this because, oh, did I not save it? I bet you I didn't save it. I saved it. All right. So we go into student lists and just put it there. Oops. You got to be kidding me. Student list CSS. We'll fix this. This is actually, I'm not sure why it's doing something stupid. But there you go. Right now it's giving me a button. Obviously it's not done really well. Right. So it needs to be kind of cleaned up. The background's not correct. The foreground color is wrong too. It's just like the whole thing is not doing a great job. So I will clean it up. There's no body in here. Yeah, the body's in the background, in the back for some reason. It's not liking the body here. Let's go ahead and put you up front. Shouldn't make a difference. Nope. Let me check the app component HTML. Okay, so I think I'm forgetting something minor. And I'll make sure that I don't forget it in the future. I'm trying to think about where I would do it. But I'll fix the CSS for our next conversation. I'm forgetting one thing somewhere. And when I do that one thing, it will all just suddenly magically work. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and put it all back to the way it was, just to make our lives easier. Right, you want to put it in the global one, which is the most external one you can find. Oh, shoot. I think I know what's wrong. I think it's supposed to be in, well, we'll deal with that next class. I don't want to spend too much time screwing around with that, but I actually think I'm trying to get to it. I actually think it's this guy out here. Nope, I was wrong. Yeah, it's this guy out here is the global styles. And if I just pasted them here, right? If I pasted them there, then it would work. That is where they need to be. Yeah. So that's your global one. I apologize. I was putting it all in the wrong place. So now I gotta go. I'll deal with it later. Before I submit this, I'll make sure to copy the files into the appropriate place. But it's a new folder, homework 3 source. Right, we're gonna copy it all. Copy it all. And voila, right? Yeah. So the caveat is I renamed that to button and it should be main. So see the BTN, I'm gonna need to make that main. I made this change in the earlier one, but unfortunately I didn't make it in the later one. Yeah, there we go. One thing I didn't do a great job of is this link here. That's not going to work because as you can see, they're kind of now invisible on certain ones, because remember, it was supposed to be across the top, and now they're in a row. So you're going to have to change that. And obviously, I'll have to change it around a little bit to make it look cleaner. But what we really want to do, and I just want to spend a couple minutes doing it, is taking the add. In this case, I have the add review, because I don't have honestly, I don't actually have the code for the form. So I'm just going to use this form, right, to do the add. So essentially, I've just copied that review, and I'm going to go to add student, and I'm going to put the HTML in there. Now, I'm going to add a student, and I'm going to make the form look the way it's supposed to look. Okay. Now, bad news. This isn't going to work. We don't want this at all. The bad news is, unfortunately, right now, it's going to have to remain. Okay. So I'm going to change it to SID. And we go name. Major is going to be a select. I always like to use like something that already exists. That makes it easier. So select value IT. Techno shouldn't have brain farted on that. Sorry. CS. Computer science. And what, we have two more. Go cyber. Right. And data analytics. There you go. And then we get rid of this. We do need a GPA before we have to submit. So I'm just going to grab a name, and we look like GPA. Oops. I'll just change the text and so forth. I want to copy you. I want to place you there. I don't want that. And I'm going to change this to GPA. Don't want you. And I think we are in good shape. What do we not have? This should be main, right? And I'm not even bothering with the index.html. I just want to see what it looks like. Add student, it looks like this, right? You got add student, start over, blah, blah, blah. Not very sexy, but it's a form, and it basically does what it's supposed to do. This obviously kind of works only because it doesn't know what the wrong page is. So here's where we wrap up. Next class, we're going to make the form page work. We're going to have to add form modules to do the things. And then immediately, we're going to be able to do edit. Like, we're going to be able to, once we get the form figured out, we're going to do edit. Okay. It's actually going to be very quick. We're going to have to talk about form states in the process. But we'll be able to do it very quick. We might likely will be able to kind of wrap up next class. But I always say that. And then there's something that makes us slow down a little bit. Okay. Always something that makes us slow down. But form, we started with forms. So we're going to do Angular form validation as well tomorrow. Actually, we won't. But we are going to make the forms work. And then we should basically wrap up, and then we do validation, and then we're done. Which is, again, kind of the advanced Angular concepts. We're going to talk about delete and its process as well in the advanced Angular concept section. But that is our goal here over the next few days. Thank you for listening to the recording. If you have any questions, please make sure to ask them. I'm going to clean up the CSS so it looks a little bit more like the homework. I'm just going to clean it up and make it look a little cleaner, so it looks, I don't know, more attractive. So we'll do that pretty shortly. All right, thank you.